trades could be coming very, very soon. And I'm talking about some big trades involving your Boston Celtics. What's going on, Green Teamers? You're watching Celtics Today by Chat Sports. I am your host, Tyler Smith. And on today's show, we have some new Boston Celtics trade reports from NBA Insiders at ESPN around other outlets around the league. So there's a lot to break down on today's show, as some trades could be coming in the next couple of weeks. Before we get into all of it, make sure you are subscribed to the channel, because one, if Celtics news goes down or if there is a trade made, we're going to be going potentially live here at the channel, but you know we're going to at least bring you guys a video breaking it all down. And we're also in the midst of a big-time sub battle with our frenemies over at Knicks Now, and they're kind of whooping our ass. To be honest, they've got a couple breaks, man. They fired their coach. They got a lot going on. They're involved in Giannis, KD, all this stuff. But I need the Celtics faithful to show up and show out, because we're going to have a wild offseason as well. Let's win this sub battle for the month of June. Go down below, hit that big red sub button. Totally free Celtics content. All right, so I bring this photo up a lot in my videos to just kind of give you guys a picture of what the Celtics offseason ahead looks like. And they have the highest projected salary in the NBA, which means they are going to face some pretty high tax penalties as a repeater, both having the same roster from 24 and 25. So that's going to cause for some shakeup within this Celtics roster, no doubt about it. But how much shakeup is actually going to happen? Look, the Celtics' goal this summer is to be at least get under the second apron. How does that happen? Well, Bobby Marks also had this to say in his most recent ESPN write-up. He said the Celtics are $23 million over the second apron, and unless the Brooklyn Nets are willing to absorb the $30.7 million expiring contract of Kristaps Porzingis, there is no direct path to getting under the second apron with one singular trade. Shedding salary will likely happen in multiple moves. And look, we anticipated that in a way this offseason. There's not a lot of teams with cap space, or at least room to absorb bigger contracts in their deals. So a lot of the one singular trades that we've been discussing on the program, even if they shed a lot of salary, only shed about $10 million max. So yes, multiple moves are going to need to happen this summer. And could that involve a Jrue Holiday, a Kristaps Porzingis, a Sam Hauser perhaps? It's all very likely at this point. But things are going to be pretty difficult around the NBA. Like I said, there's no real money able and free for other teams to absorb a ton extra on the books, and there's not a lot of teams that have free agency cap space either. So it's going to take not only your ability to negotiate and your ability to come to terms with another team, but you're going to have to find the team that it actually makes sense and it actually financially works out with, as far as finding a trade partner. So, and then you couple in all this nonsense with the Celtics being above the second apron. Like, there are so many restrictions. This new collective bargaining agreement, it really limits and kind of punishes teams like the Celtics for building a great roster, and especially drafting some of their best players. They gave away 2 Supermax contracts. Now they're probably going to have to blow up some other money just to keep those 2 guys together. And if they want to make a trade, they can't send out multiple players in the same deal because they're above the second apron. So it's going to have to be a Kristaps trade here, a Holiday trade here, a Hauser trade here. However many it takes for them to get under the second apron to where they can couple 2 contracts together in a deal. They can also not use more than 100% of a traded player exception. Makes sense. They have literally zero wiggle room to absorb new money. They can also not send out cash in a potential trade as well. They cannot use a pre-existing trade exception, which I don't even know how that makes sense, but they cannot use it. Also, they cannot sign a waived player who, before he was cut, made $14.1 million or more. So they are heavily restricted as to what they can do this offseason, but I do believe in the brain trust, and Brad Stevens has said we knew this was coming, so we are prepared, and we're going to do what needs to happen for us to be in a spot that we find ourselves successful and financially free. Evan Siddery said this about the potential Kristaps Porzingis trade domino to fall. He said, the prevailing thought among league executives is the Celtics will need to include draft capital in a trade to offload Porzingis' $30.7 million. Boston is very open to moving Porzingis, as the top goal will be to dodge a second apron this offseason. Look, I can't say I'm shocked about this. Like, we heard that there was going to be interest around the league for Porzingis and his expiring $30 million contract, but what do you kind of see most often when those contracts get dealt? You see draft capital get attached, and the way that Porzingis was performing out there on the basketball court, it really has not risen his value all too much. It actually has tanked it quite literally to the worst of his entire career. So the value in trading for Porzingis is in the money coming off of the books after next season. So that's going to mean the Celtics probably have to attach a first-round draft pick potentially to get off of the money. But it doesn't stop there, because we also heard from Jake Fisher that the Celtics may have to attach draft capital to Jrue Holiday as well to get off of his money, which is the longer contract. Like, that's one where he's going to be in a couple of years, 37 years old, with a $37 million player option. So it potentially could be difficult to move him as well. And with a big $35 million deal, like, the teams that you can potentially send him out to are limited as well. And I would assume only real contenders in this league would want to add Jrue Holiday to help them get over the hump. But the Celtics, I'm not so sure that they're operating under this idea. Matt Moore of Hardwood Paroxysm over on Twitter, he also works at the Action Network, revealed this about Boston's idea of what they could return back for Jrue. While the focus has been on reducing payroll, sources told the Paroxysm that Boston is setting the price of a first-round pick along with whatever reduced salary comes back in the deal. That's insane to me. We've gone from the Celtics may have to attach a first-round pick to get rid of Holiday to the Celtics are asking for a first-round pick in return for Jrue Holiday. Look, Brad Stevens is insane, and I love it. This is the guy who traded for Derek White for Josh Richardson and a bag of chips. This is the guy who took Marcus Smart, a player who has been the pillar and the heart and soul of this franchise, and traded him away for a better basketball player that people were kind of underlooking. He swooped in and took the low-hanging fruit of Jrue Holiday by just sending away Malcolm Brogdon and Robert Williams, both of which who had major injury concerns of their own. So Brad Stevens is always akin to making the unexpected move, and he's always akin to making the smart move. So I'm always going to believe in him. Do I believe that Jrue Holiday is going to return a first-round pick? If you put a gun to my head, I would probably say no, but I believe in Brad Stevens. He could absolutely swindle a front office around this league. What do you guys think, though? What's more likely if the Boston Celtics trade away Jrue Holiday? Do the Celtics send away a first in the deal, or do they get back a first in the deal? Let me know what you guys think the more likely outcome is if the Celtics end up trading number 4. Look, man, you can't count anything out with Brad Stevens. Like I just mentioned, with all of the moves that he's made in his Celtics tenure to this point, how can you doubt him in any shape of the imagination? Like, he's continuously made move after move that has made this team closer and closer to championship contention, and then they won the big one in 2024. I trust that he's going to continue to make difficult yet strategically, smart moves to help this team long term. And with that being said, like, that means everything's on the table. So what that means is the Boston Celtics cannot view their entire, players on their roster as untouchable. If the right package comes around, then you have to consider trading a guy like a Jaylen Brown, who carries a $50+ million, going to be close to $70 million contract in a few years, and then have Tatum with the same figure or even more because he may, his contract's bigger. So, like, the Celtics cannot view Jaylen Brown as untouchable, especially when you consider a couple of things that might end up happening over the next couple of weeks. And the Twitter rumors, like, they kind of agree. Like, this, remember the per sources tweet that we brought up a couple of shows ago, where he was saying that the Celtics' goal is to, yes, get under the second apron, but they are also looking at getting under the luxury tax entirely, which, if that's the case, then you're probably trading Jaylen Brown in one of those scenarios. And per sources did say that the Celtics are probably going to listen to Jaylen Brown offers, albeit they're not, looking or have him on the trade block right now, but there's a chance they at least consider it. And there's a reason that that could be the case. When Brian Windhorst dropped this bomb on ESPN earlier today, he said the NBA offseason is going to happen faster than normal. Shams has closed his calendar, and he's preparing to work his hardest around the draft. You're going to get action very soon. And yeah, there's always action around the draft. There's always draft day trades here and there, but with teams, financially limited this offseason when it comes to free agency, and this draft being so sought after, deals are going to be made. Teams are going to want these draft picks, these first-round draft picks in 2025 on their roster heading into next season. So expect moves to be happening here. Once the finals ends, that week and a half stretch potentially, you're going to see a lot of movement around the NBA. And Giannis, Antetokounmpo, and Kevin Durant are the obvious names to watch. When Shams said this could be the most craziest offseason ever, he said those were the two names to watch. And look, is Giannis going to get traded? I'm not so sure, but it does seem like KD is going to get traded, and the Celtics could potentially factor in to these big blockbuster deals going down, but they might not get one of the two superstars. We'll talk about that in just a moment. Make sure you guys get hooked up with some swag from our friends over at Fanatics. With this link right here, chatsports.com/6man of the year, you guys can get dripped out in this Peyton Pritchard commemorative 6-man of the year. Look, I don't think he's going to be traded this offseason. He's on way too good of a deal, so you can get a long-term piece for your collection with this Peyton Pritchard 6-man of the year shirt. This link right here, chatsports.com/6MOY. I'll put that link in the comment section and description of today's show to make it easier for you guys. Go get dripped out today. So how do the Celtics factor in to the potential mayhem that could be going down over the next couple of weeks with a Kevin Durant domino to fall, with a Giannis Antetokounmpo potential trade request coming, how do the Celtics potentially factor in? Well, the presumptive notion is that Kevin Durant is going to be traded over the next few weeks, and his days with the Phoenix Suns are over. So could the Celtics potentially find a way into the Kevin Durant trade rumor mill? Well, not exactly as far as returning Durant to Boston. Brian Robb said this: given Boston's need to make some move some excess salary this offseason, they certainly could try to work their way into a deal to help move secondary pieces. The other aspect of this is worth watching for Boston, naturally, is where Durant adds up. So Rob is basically saying that the Celtics could be used as a vehicle to execute a 3-4 team trade in order to get Durant to the destination that Phoenix wants to send him to, and them get their return back. But Brad Stevens, if that is going to be the case, I don't think he would help or at least assist in Kevin Durant coming back to the Eastern Conference. Like, he's not, especially if he's not going to trade Jaylen Brown or try to contend next season, like, he's not going to help another team become better than them for 25-26. It just makes no sense, and that's not how Brad Stevens works. But I do think that there's a chance the Celtics get involved in this deal if Durant gets moved to a San Antonio Spurs or Houston Rockets, two teams in the Western Conference who have been heavily linked to Durant over the past couple of months. And then if we flip to the Giannis front, like, I doubt Giannis actually gets moved, but the rumors are very hot at this point. The Knicks are interested. The Spurs are interested. The Rockets are interested. The Raptors are interested. Like, who isn't interested in Giannis Antetokounmpo? I am. I would trade Jaylen Brown for him. But I'm not so sure that Milwaukee is willing to move him at this point. They seem like they're pulling out the stops to try to get him to stay long-term, kind of selling that the East is bad, and I don't know, using Doc Rivers as a potential bargaining chip. I don't know why that they think that that's going to make Giannis stay. But regardless, I don't think Giannis is getting moved at this point. So who knows if that big domino is going to fall or not. But if it doesn't, and there's no trade request sent out there, then there could be some real rumblings around Jaylen Brown potentially. If Giannis isn't traded, and by the way, Brian Winhorst has said there is no Giannis trade market right now because he has requested nothing, and the Bucks do not want to trade him. So if that's the case, then after Durant's dealt, who becomes the next best player that NBA teams could fish around the league trying to trade for? Like, there's a lot of untouchable talents in the league, but I don't know if Jaylen Brown is going to be that guy. Jaylen Brown becomes the best player that could be floated in a potential trade, in my opinion, if or once Kevin Durant is traded and there's no Giannis trade to be had. So those teams that could be looking to get over the hump and add that kind of franchise centerpiece kind of addition, they could be looking at Jaylen Brown if there's no Giannis trade that materializes. What say you guys, though? Do you guys think Jaylen Brown is untouchable in trades this offseason? Yes or no? I want to hear from the Green Teamers down in the comment section if you guys want JB in town no matter what for the rest of his career. That'll do it for this edition of Celtics Today by Chat Sports. And make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Like I said, we're going to beat the Knicks now in this sub battle in the month of June. But more importantly, if Celtics news goes down, we're going to break it down right here at Celtics Today. So lock us in for the best Celtics content all offseason long. Hit that big red sub button. We'll see you guys in the next one. And as always, let's go C's.